Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, and unfortunately, brothers and sisters of the icosahedron, we cannot count it all joy. There's some sad news. Today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. There are zero spoilers in this content, and all we're going to do today is we're just going to break down the numbers of the opening box office weekend for Dungeons & Dragons. Just as a minor note, I am literally on my way right now to see Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves for my third time. Right? So all the numbers that you're about to hear about, this isn't my fault. Right? And actually, to be clear, this is the 12th ticket I have bought to see Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves for me or for others. Right? So I'm doing my part. Let's get into this. All right. So the numbers are horrific. They are really bad. Okay, so let's talk. So what did Dungeons & Dragons cost? It cost $150 million to make, and then there was major marketing on top of that. It is easily, it's almost a certainty they spent 100 to 150 million. Let's call it 150 million more for the marketing. They had multiple red carpeting events. They had junkets left, right, and center, right? They flew these stars all over the world to talk to every media press that would talk to them. Paramount pulled out all the stops and really treated this like a real movie. And they worked really hard to make this really work. So legit, there's at least 250 million sunk by Paramount and other, financial sources into this, maybe as much as 300 million. And its opening weekend box office was $38.5 million. That is catastrophic. What it should have made for it to be commercially successful is it should have made its budget back on week one, right? And so it should have made $150 million. Instead, it made $38.5 million, which is catastrophic. That is 38. Nobody makes $150 million movie. Nobody pays a budget of $150 million to make 38.5 on opening weekend. You should. So today, just so you're aware, 10, 20 years ago, if you made $100 million on your movie, it didn't matter what any of the numbers were. You got your sequel and everything was good, right? But the reality is today, for a movie to be successful, the metric is triple the budget, right? You don't need to worry about marketing or any of that. Just get the budget number. The budget number on Dungeons & Dragons is openly discussed at 150 million, right? So we generally know that. And so that means this movie should have made 450 million for it to be called a commercial success. Okay? And that was the goal, right? Hollywood doesn't make movies to break even, right? And they certainly don't make movies to lose money, right? And so this is very, very bad. I just want to get that out of the way because you're going to hear lots of different squawk and spin and blah blah blah, right? So the opening box office number is absolutely horrible. Why? All right, why? Here we go. Okay, the number one reason why why Hasbro's Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves failed is the OSR allies. Their concerted, continued, committed campaign of D&D be gone, D&D boycott the D&D movies was effective. It made the movie stumble. It was effective. They were able to carry the 2023 OGL crisis, the 2023 manic panic, and the host is very close to killing the parasite is close to killing the host. Right? This was a huge step forward. There were massive investment put into this. This is a big move for Hasbro. And when the tabletop role-playing game community, the Dungeons & Dragons community, needed everybody to show up, the OSR allies did exactly what I've been telling you for 5 years, that they are the most dangerous threat. The OSR allies, in my humble opinion, are the most dangerous threat to Dungeons & Dragons that exists today, bar none. No one else was shouting D&D be gone in the streets. Right? And on Twitter, right? And that's the issue, right? They used the same words of terror that came out of the 1983 Satanic Panic. They knew that 40 years of hatred pulled forward and echoed today would do the job, and it did. The OSR allies are the number one reason this movie failed. their boycott of the film was successful, right? And they got people, and they got people to say, oh, I'll skip it, right? Also, I think Ginny D was incredibly effective in making sure people did not go see this movie with her incredibly interestingly timed movie saying, hey, you guys, the D&D movie's 9 days away. Let me remind you that D&D movies suck, and tell you exactly how bad the Dungeons & Dragons 2000 movie was. I think it was calculated, and I think it was effective, and I think it kept hundreds of thousands, if not low millions of viewers from coming to see the film. That's my humble opinion. Okay? All right. So, all right. Now, here, let's get into some deeper numbers that tell another. Okay, so I told you the number one reason. That is not the only reason these numbers were so bad. Here's the next one. Dungeons & Dragons has a very traditional, real problem of old white male. And it is a real problem, and that viper has struck again, right? So the reality is, what is the perception of D&D? And a lot of people are like, oh, that's just a bunch of old white guys pretending to be an elf in their basement, right? Now, here's the problem. Pretending to be an elf is not correct. That's not even remotely true about what Dungeons & Dragons is, okay? In their basement is no longer true, okay? The reality is many people who play Dungeons & Dragons have been able to be commercially successful for decades, right? And so most D&D players are no longer living in their parents' basement, right? It's a fallacy. Older white male is all 100% true. And honestly, the last count we got from Wizards of the Coast, they were like 61% of our... This is incredible. I think it came out in 2019, and they said 61% of our people are... actually, Hasbro said 60% of D&D players are male. Guess what the percentage of males going to the movie was? 61%. 61% male. The largest demographic was older, 25 years and older, male, and 48% Caucasian, and no other demographic was larger than that. In fact, Hispanic was the second demographic, and that was 26%, okay, which were almost probably all brought, or like probably the majority of them were brought by Holga Kilgore's Michelle Rodriguez, right? She has a strong relationship with that community, and I think she actually did bring out Latino and Latina viewers, right? But the reality is there's a perception of Dungeons & Dragons that it's played by older white males, and the demographics of the movie literally backed it up. That's a real problem. That is a real problem. And we can no longer pretend that Dungeons & Dragons is being successful in drawing a diverse community, right? The demographics of the film 100% matched and qualified the horrible perception of the game, which is unfortunately proven to be a reality, right? And the reality is, and what shocks me is there's so much pushback, right? When people of color and LGBTQ non-player characters are put into the game, and Hasbro was right. They needed to change. They needed to change this all along, right? And the reality is they simply have, and they have been attempting to do it, but they've simply failed to do it, right? And what's really shocking and galling is that the D&D community pushes back on them for even attempting it. When the need for it is no longer a debatable subject, it's absolutely fact, right? Like, honestly, I think it's a pattern which anyone who looks at it with their true eyes will see the truth of it, in my humble opinion. That's the best way to say that, okay? So, this is horribly upsetting. It's horribly upsetting to see the OSR allies win, right? It's horribly upsetting to see the OSR allies say, we don't care if this movie has lots of people of color. We don't care if this movie has lots of LGBTQ. We will burn D&D to the ground just to make sure that our copyrights are protected, that we can copy the game we need to. And they did it. They absolutely succeeded in powerfully devastating the biggest attempt to push Dungeons & Dragons forward that has has ever happened since 2000. And frankly, this was a far better approach than what had happened in 2000. And so this is horrifically horrible. And I want to get it, I want to get this fact straight, because people come in and they spin like crazy, right? And it's going to get spun on the OSR side, and it's going to get spun even on the D&D side. And, I can't wait to see whatever horrible take the character sheet over in comicbook.com has. They're like, I guess now that the movie's failed, they can like go back to, kicking D&D in the nards, right? Like, it's really frustrating, and it's really challenging. And I appreciate your patience. I'm disappointed. I'm very upset, right? And I'm truly, truly just galled and frustrated to see the OSR allies win. It is terrible. Like, we live in a broken world and villains win. It's just so clear some days, right? So I hope you, every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.